Hello, I'm Arrington Thompson, and I'm half of Old School Guys talking old school music, and I have my absolutely great friend, Larry Fulcher. Larry is a two-time Grammy award-winning bassist. Larry, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm really excited about what we're doing today. The fact that we got Mr. Al Anderson to talk with us today, man, that's, I think people are really going to enjoy hearing Al's voice, his story, and his insight, and his experiences in music, not only with Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, but just overall his musicianship, which I respect greatly, greatly, greatly. I met him through Taj Mahal in London. I think he was playing with Lauryn Hill, and you were high on our wish list of people to get to talk to, man, and share some time with. So thank you, Al, for being here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. Thank you for the kind words.
So, Al, let's just start at the beginning. How did you get interested in music, and how did you catch that bug?
Oh, wow. Well, everybody in my family was either military and a musician, or a musician and military. It didn't separate from, the two went together with everything. My father was a bass player. My mother was a pianist, and my uncle was a guitar player. My cousin played organ. My other cousin played guitar. So there was always like instruments on Christmas holidays in everyone's home when I was growing up. So I was more interested in sports myself, in judo and martial arts as a very young kid. And then when I got to see how my cousins, my father and mother and uncle and aunt were motivated by music, made everything more smooth in the house. Because I don't come from one of those families where the mother and father and sister and brother was well-rounded, and there was a lot of turbulence in my family as growing up, so you had to find something to stay out of the way of the belt or a backhand,
Sure, sure. So you grew up in New Jersey, but somehow you found your way into California, and you were around Berklee College. Could you talk a little bit about the people you were exposed to and how you actually got out there?
People think that I really come from Jersey. We came from Harlem.
Okay.
To Jersey. My mother wanted a backyard.
Okay.
She got tired of the concrete jungle and all the hustle uptown. And so we bought a house out in Montclair, New Jersey. And basically it just started off not really interested in music in the beginning, but sports was a big thing. I was a football player for the Montclair Eagles.
There you go.
And Mr. Moss and Mr. Jackson taught me how to run and hurdle and be involved with football, basketball, and baseball. I was a three-letter guy in Montclair. I had three M's on my sweater.
Nice.
Back in the collegiate days when you had to represent your team in your town. So I went through all that, a lot of cheerleaders cheering us on. That kind of background was very stable for me because it gave me discipline. And I was tired when I went home, playing football, running track, and doing baseball in season. We were always, physically fit and building our bodies to endure like the sports of the season. And then my cousin was playing with the Barkays for a minute.
Nice.
Yeah, and I got to hear him play one night, and a couple of guys that were cool in the gang. And I was like, wow, this is pretty funky, It was interesting. And so my uncle had like it was like a 175 or an
The Gibson?
L5.
Yeah.
Gibson, yeah. He had one of those hanging around the house, and I used to strum on it, and it, you know, it was hard on your fingers. It was one of those things you had to get used to. Okay, here's the guitar. All my father plays bass, but it was the guitar I kind of honed in on, but it wasn't the instrument that I ended up playing. I played bass because I had the opportunity to learn a little bit from my father, and I wanted to play bass first. But then as I got older, a gentleman gave a group called the Centaurians, which was a soul group that I used to hang around with and admire because my friends were in the band, and you know, they would play at all the parties and stuff. So I was getting interested in the fact that, wow, these guys were making a really cool sound. So then a club owner in Succossana, New Jersey said, one of the guitar players left the group, and he said, hey man, if you learn these 15 songs, I'll give you $500 a week. I was like, what?
Done.
That's pretty. Yeah, let's do it.
You know, 16, say 17, and they were probably in their 20s. And so we used to go up and play in all the discotheques up there, and that was a start, you know. And the Berklee thing was, I never went to Berklee. You know, there's a lot of stuff on Wikipedia that's not true about me, like my age. I'm born in '52. We started in Harlem, went to Jersey and all that. And basically, a friend of mine was accepted to Berklee, you know. He passed the exam and the whole nine. He paid the tuition. So he said, look, I'm going to Boston and study like theory. And I was like, wow, that's pretty heavy. Because I had a bunch of teachers in New Jersey, but they didn't know how to talk to me. They were always, Marona mia, you didn't study, and all these, a lot of attitude that I was a better student accepting information from somebody who had a really smooth voice, like my history teacher, and like my science teacher, and my biology teacher. They all spoke to me where I could concentrate on what they were saying, opposed to my math teacher and my English teacher, who was very hands-on, like, hey, you don't know, and you need to go home and study, and still abrupt teaching. But back to the Berklee thing, my friend was going to Berklee, was enrolled in Berklee, and at that time, it was around early 70s. Berklee had just pretty much started as a school of teaching music, and I had the opportunity to be on Boston College's in the dorms there. A friend of mine had a double room, and he was studying economics, and he was never there, so he let me crash there because I didn't have a place to live. But I did get a job. I was working at Dorothy Muriel's bakery,
Okay.
cutting cheese, delivering milk on the truck, and cutting up cheese and all that stuff. And I was getting $600 a week, so I graduated to another $100. And when you're like 19, 18 years old and you're getting $600, you can get a ride, you can get yourself a crib. So I did that. And then my friend comes into Boston, and I followed him up there, got the job working in the bakery, and then he's going to school, and they weren't asking for identification at that time. It took them almost like a year. And so a lot of students who were going to classes in the rehearsal rooms and ear training and the seminars, they were saying, Al, you know, like, look, there's no identification, like you don't have to show that you've enrolled, but you can get some free tutoring. So I used the instrumental rooms where they practiced, and so there was like 20 different incredible guitar players, bass players, and drummers. So we would jam for hours, and then they did their homework as well. And guys were showing me how music was being charted, and Major Holly was teaching up there, and Pat Metheny came through and did some teaching along with Al DiMeola, who was well schooled. Mick Goodrick was the head of the guitar department. He was hands down like a theory monster. And so I started sneaking into all the classes for like 6-7 months. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, enrollment has been fulfilled. They had all the students they were taking for the year, and now they gave out photo IDs, and I didn't have one. So I used to give all the security guards, who basically, they knew all the faces coming and going, because there wasn't thousands of students, but there was a lot of students. So, and these guys' memory was good. So I used to give them weed, and then they would let me. So I'm up to like 8 months of free study and getting some teaching from Herbie Hancock, Joe Zawinul, Major Holly, with ear training, and just jamming out in the practice rooms, really enjoying the fact that if I did have the opportunity to go to Berklee, this is what I would endure. And so with all the people, Joe Henderson and all these incredible, Dave Liebman, Becker, Michael Brecker, Randy Brecker, all these guys came up there and they were doing seminars. And so I went to all of them that I could go to. And then it was like, okay, Al, you're done. That's it. It's over. So I took all that knowledge and just manifested it. And I never went to Berklee. I snuck into Berklee school and got a small education.
Sounds like you got a great education.
Thank you.
Around this time, you met the great Carlos Santana. Tell us about that.
1969, he played the Boston Tea Party.
Mm-hmm.
And
Legendary
he was
place.
with Neil Sean and Marlowe and all those guys from the original Caravanserai group. And then he had a young guitar player named Neil Sean that was like, yo, this guy is really smoking. And so I came into, when they were doing a sound check, and just kind of snuck in. And because I wanted to meet him. I wanted to see what kind of man he was, because, the whole Woodstock thing, which was amazing. And so I got to talk with him. And then I befriended him. I came to all their shows in Boston, which was several shows in that area. And I saw that he had a spiritual demeanor. And I asked him, why was he so calm when he was performing? Why was he so, why did he have such a positive frequency on stage as directing a big Latin rock blues group? Because I wanted to know how this is done, because it maybe could help me in my future. So he said, man, I do Transcendental Meditation. I'm involved in yoga and the spiritual way of life with music. And it's something you should really look into, because it'll keep you calm. Because I noticed that when I was playing with a lot of other guys that were above my ability, I was sweating. I was like nervous and like, yo, man, I got to be on my A game with these guys, because they're way ahead of my trend of wanting to play music. And then I realized that it was all about, it wasn't about trying to keep up, it was about being calm around the circumstances of whoever the artist was, whoever the producer was, or whoever the studio was to keep cool and listen and keep your mouth closed. And so I met him there, and I met him in San Francisco later. And then he became a big fan of Bob Marley. He let us know he loved what we were doing. And the attitude and the rebel music, he was all about it. And one day I got a telephone call because, we exchanged numbers for years. And his management said, hey man, you want to go on tour with Carlos? So I got to talk with him. I was like, is this for real? Because I didn't have anything happening at that time, but just basically touring with the Wailers after Bob went on his journey. And Carlos was super cool to me. He took me on the road a couple times.
What time period? What time? I'm sorry to interrupt. What time period was that, Al? What years are we talking about?
Wow, like
It's got to be in the mid '80s because it's after Bob died, right? So
yeah, no, this is like 2000, 99, 98, like this, around there. Long time ago.
Yeah.
But I've seen him since and had conversations with him and seen him play. I'm a big avid fan of him because of how cool he was when he let me play with him. He took me on tour. He gave me strings. He gave us everything. He gave us merchandise. He gave us instruments. He was just a beautiful guy. And then when I joined Lauren, he was very together with her too. And he would come to some of the gigs and sit in. And
he played on one of those. He played on one of those tracks on the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Yeah, I think it's Zion, right?
I think you're exactly right. So let's back up a little bit. And let's get into how did you meet Bob Marley, and then let's listen to a couple of those clips of you playing with Bob Marley. How did you meet Bob?
First of all, I used to live around the corner of Fillmore West. Sorry, I always say West because I lived in California. So Fillmore East. I lived on St. Mark's Place, and Fillmore East was not even 5 minutes from my doorstep. So I went there every single night. I saw everybody. I saw Miles there. I saw everybody but Hendrix, let's say. That iconic thing with him and Buddy Miles and the brother on bass there.
Billy Cox.
Billy Cox, yeah. I miss that. But I used to go there avidly. And I liked a lot of the English groups that were there. So I met Maynard Ferguson's horn players first, smoking some weed before the gig. And they were playing the Vanguard, Bitter End, Blue Note. And they came Fillmore East. I really liked Maynard Ferguson. He was really super cool cat.
And he always had a wicked band. I mean, his horns.
Oh, Bud Parks and Goo. Yeah, Bud Parks on trumpet, Goo on tenor and alto. And these guys treated me really cool. So we used to smoke our heads off, go check their sets. So they played Fillmore East, went there. And there were some English groups like Traffic with Stevie Winwood, Jim Capaldi, and Chris Wood, and Dave Mason.
Dave Mason, yeah.
Yeah, and a group called Free. And then they had the record executive that was running the company at that time was Chris Blackwell. So he would always be with the band. He was their manager. So he had Free, and he had Traffic. And Traffic had a Nigerian kunga drum player named Rebop Kwakuba, who I befriended, and then I got to know all the other guys. Rebop was super. When he came into the band, he changed the beat, put a little more oomph in Traffic, and he did his thing. And so we became friends, and they were the guitarist of Free was a good friend. Andy Frazier on bass, Paul Rogers, and Simon Kirk on drums. So I got to smoke some weed because I used to sneak into backstage at Fillmore East, and there would be Bill Graham there, and he knew what my program was, getting his musicians high before they went on stage, and he wasn't about that. So he'd either throw me out and then the musicians in the band would get me a pass and get me back in. You know, it was like one of those crazy things where he didn't like me at all because he knew my agenda. I wanted to be hanging around all these musicians and absorb the energies of how these great performers at that time behaved and how well they played. I wanted to know, you know, what is this guy like? You know, Miles would never talk to me. You know, I always extended my hand to him, but he would never shake my hand. And he would just say, boy, you need to get out of here. Because I was always asking him, and what's the guy's name? Who was the bass player? Henderson? Mike Henderson?
Michael Henderson.
Yeah. He was with the Detroit Emeralds, and I was really close with them. So I kind of knew Mike, and that's where I got a chance to hang around and just be around Miles for a lot of gigs. But that was one of many musicians that were there. But going back to how I met Bob Marley was through Traffic, Chris Blackwell, and Free.
Island Records.
Island Records at that time. And so I befriended Paul and Woody. Woody and Paul were really good friends. So when I got tired of New York because of, we had a lot of racial discrimination going on at that time. Like it was a jungle fever times where the Italians and the blacks were tripping, you know? It's just like, you know, the Moolies and the Guineas, all these bad attitudes.
The Stop and Frisk Giuliani days?
No, that was Anthony Imperiale. He was running New York.
Okay.
Heavy guy. Didn't like Black Panthers and all that. And you know, we were all about that from Harlem, you know. Mm-hmm. But I got tired of the racism between black and whites because I truly feel that it's a yin-yang thing with color. You need black people. You need Africans. You need, we all need it. Mm-hmm. We need white people too. We need to live together, and that's something we've never been able to do because certain principles of their mentalities of hierarchy and
tribalism too.
Absolutely. I mean,
yes.
As Africans, we have our own agenda. You know, Tutsis and Zulus. I was on a underground in South Africa, and these guys they looked the same to me, and they were going at it. And so when I got to Africa, I know how I was accepted in Africa. One brother came up to me and Nigerian said, oh, all these other brothers here in the Whalers are Africans, but you don't look African. And so when I started talking, he goes, you know African. And I was like, oh, can you imagine this? All the years we've been separated, now I'm here in Africa checking my roots. And this guy says, I'm not a part of the program. So we have to be together, first of all. I don't care what color you are. If you're with the program, if you're with culture, if you've traveled and you're educated and you're eating certain foods, healthy foods, and you're listening to certain and many different philosophies, you'll be way ahead of the game because you're able to communicate. Some people are introverts. I was never. I'm not an extrovert either. I'm somebody who absorbs frequencies and energies, and I put them into my genetic personality. And then when it comes to expressing myself, all that what I've absorbed from all these fantastic artists and cultures, I give it back to whenever I'm performing or even if I'm sitting around just playing for myself.